And I was checking my hours, and I noticed that I was significantly faster, like 60% faster, since using that tool for the same type of tasks. And that was sort of like a lightning bulb moment for me. Yeah, that made me decide, like, actually, maybe I should take this more seriously. And I did, and I've been working on Polypane full-time for the past 6 years now.
Welcome to Commit and Push, the podcast about how great software really gets built. I'm Damien Filiatrault, your host and the founder of Scalable Path. Each episode, I talk with founders, developers, and leaders about the decisions, trade-offs, and hard lessons behind successful digital products. Let's get into it. Okay, so joining me today is Killian Valkhof, who's a developer, educator, and the creator of Polypane, a browser purpose-built for web developers. Killian, welcome to the Commit and Push podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So you want to start off by sharing a bit about your background and how you got so interested in the browser space?
Yeah, sure. It wasn't at all on purpose. I am a web developer by trade, so I make websites, and I've been making websites for a very long time. Over 20 years now. And whenever or whilst building websites, I was always like tinkering with other technologies and other tools that helped me do my job better. So that made things easier, or that helped me make less mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And Polypane was just one of those. So I built the prototype 10 years ago this year. So it's been a long time in the making. But yeah, so I built a really crappy prototype of what would eventually become Polypane. And it was nice to use. So I used it for a while and didn't really think anything more about it. You know, it was just one in a long line of tools. And then at some point I was checking my hours. As you do, I used to run a web agency. So, you know, hours are important. And I was checking my hours, and I noticed that I was significantly faster, like 60% faster, since using that tool for the same type of tasks. And that was sort of like a lightning bulb moment for me.
That's a lot.
That's
a lot. 60%.
Yes. That made me decide, like, actually, maybe I should take this more seriously. And I did, and I've been working on Polypane full-time for the past 6 years now.
Cool. So, I mean, why don't we just dive in? Like, you want to tell people about what Polypane is and why you think people should be using it as opposed to other browsers for development like Chrome with dev tools?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so as you said, Polypane is a browser for developers. There's really three main parts to Polypane. They kind of grew organically. The first part is it helps you with responsive design. And it does so by showing your site in as many different screen sizes as you need at the same time in one overview. And they're all live. And whenever you interact with one of those screens, which in Polypane are called panes, and there's many of them. So whenever you interact with one of them, your interactions actually happen on all panes. So if you're clicking something, that happens in all panes. If you're typing something, that happens in all panes. If you're hovering over something, the hover effect happens in all panes. And what that gives you is that you get instant feedback across all the screen sizes, all the emulated devices that you care about. And that means you no longer have to resize your browser or grab that Android phone from the back of the drawer and then charge it for half an hour and then test whether or not it works on your Android phone. So that's part one. But as I was building a browser for developers that did all these things, naturally, like, other parts came up as well. Like, what are other things that you as a developer care about that browsers don't really make easy for you? And a big one is accessibility. So as a developer, you want insight into how your web page is rendered. And other browsers really only give you the insight in two ways, which is how does it look and what is the document structure or the DOM structure. What elements are you using? But there's much more layers to your website that you should also care about that aren't part of those two constructs. For example, the heading outline, so the list of headings that you have on your page. Those are used by people with assistive technologies to navigate through your page. So if you don't have them, that makes it really hard for those people to use. But if you do have them, but you sort of use them in a way that isn't particularly useful to actually be headings of parts of your page, so you're using them purely for visuals, or you're putting a lot of content in them, or maybe you're repeating the same heading over and over again, that is also very frustrating. But it's also really hard to realize that just by looking at, a nicely visually designed website. So Polypane also gives you all these insights into different parts of the structure of your website, and then gives you advice. So a very specific one is if you have two headings that have the same text. Say, for example, you're on your contact page. Well, that page probably has the heading, the top level heading of contact. But you probably have a repeated footer on all pages of your website. And that footer might also have a little block that says contact with your email and your business address or something. Mm-hmm. So if you can see, then it's very clear, like the big, huge contact at the top of the page is a completely different thing from the small contact in the footer of your page. Like they're clearly two different things. They're in different places. That's very easy to see. But if all you hear is the word heading contact, then now you've lost where you no longer know where you are on the page. Are you at the top or are you at the bottom?
So if you're a blind person using
for example,
a reader.
if you have a visual impairment.
Yeah.
And then that becomes annoying, and people that are annoyed by your website are probably not gonna buy stuff on your website or contact you or do whatever you want them to do on your website. So it's all these little things that together add up to like a good experience for everyone. And in Polypane, I really try to make that as visual, as inspectable as possible. And then the last thing that really stands out in Polypane compared to other browsers is that we give the same treatment to your head, your HTML head. So that's where things like your meta tags and your title and your description and your fev icon, etc. are. Usually when there's an error in that part of your page, you discover that right after you've shared the page on social media, and everyone sees like a placeholder description or a broken image or whatever. So in Polypane, because I can inspect all those things, I take that information and I generate social media previews for you. Even if your site isn't online yet, if the browser can open the web page, we can generate social media previews for you. So you can see how things look before having to share them on social media. So that you can see that that's incredibly helpful. And it also helps, it helps you inform how your page acts across different social media. So we have about 8 now, I think. So whether that's like Blue Sky or X or Facebook or Mastodon or LinkedIn, you can make sure that you're optimizing for the things you care about.
Cool. So yeah, you've added a bunch of cool features that make developers' lives easier, which is super interesting. You know, how did you come up with these ideas? Or were these all the things that you came up with? Were some of them ideas from your actual users once you launched it?
It's a bit of both. So one of the nice things about developing for developers is that they have a lot of ideas, and they also know generally like how to submit feature requests. So I get a lot of really good feature requests from users, but I also try to mix that with things no one asked for but do need. I mean, starting with the multiple screens in one overview. So I always try to do a healthy mix of things I think people need and things people ask me about.
How do you gather feedback from your users?
So I don't really have a set process, and that's because I'm just by myself. I do this as a solo developer. So setting up a whole bunch of process where like eventually it has to come through me into my backlog. Why not just accept feedback everywhere, and then it still comes through me and it still gets sent to my backlog. So whether that's I regular like DM with people on Slack or Blue Sky or Discord or wherever. They can email me. They can send me messages on any social media. They can chat on the website or through the app. And that means that whatever is most convenient to my users, I end up supporting. I think if you search really well, you can even find my cell phone on the website, because that's a requirement of like some enterprise onboarding type flows. But so far, I don't get a lot of phone calls. Who'd have thought?
Wow. You're not
yeah.
maybe that's something about being in the Netherlands. My God, I'm just buried. I think we're all buried here with spam calls. I don't know if it's the same
so
over there.
No, in Europe, we're pretty good with that. I get maybe a couple of spam phone calls a week. But they're relatively easy to suss out. They always have the same type of phone number structure for some reason.
Oh no, here it's like no one answers their phone anymore unless they know who it is.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. One thing I know that it has is dark and light mode, which seems pretty cool. What features does it have about performance? Anything different than Chrome, for example?
So Chrome has been catching up.
Okay.
But in Polypane, you can gather the Web Vitals information for each pane. So say you have like an iPhone and an iPad and a laptop size side by side. Then each of these three panes will gather their own Web Vitals score as you render the page. And then we get quirks data, which is data that Google collects from all the users of Google Chrome on desktop and on mobile to get like averages for Web Vital scores. And then we can compare and contrast. So we can say like on your MacBook M4, your cumulative layout shift is minimal, but for like 60% of your users, it's actually, it needs improvement, which is one of the three buckets of Web Vitals. So it's either good, it needs improvement, or it's bad, which is a nice scale for them. So that means that you can, we as developers, we usually have really good machines because we can afford to have really good machines, and it does make us more productive. But the flip side is that most of your users won't have an M4 MacBook or a really fancy Windows device. So that means your experience is always going to be better than that of your users. So there might be issues that you just never encounter because everything's fast enough that it doesn't become a problem. And with these web vitals, because you can just like instantly see, okay, this is how my website performs in the wild, and we automatically split between mobile and desktop, because mobile scores are different from desktop scores because they have different characteristics. So you can very easily see like where do I need to focus my energy in terms of performance. And what we then also do is with the Web Vitals scores we do collect, we can visualize stuff in the page. So we can show you like these elements cause your cumulative layout shift. This is your largest contentful paint element, and you should care about that if it's an image, and you shouldn't really care about that if it's text. So things like that, we really try to visualize as you use your web page.
So a quick pause here. I wanted to tell you a bit about why I started my software staffing company, Scalable Path. Back in 2008, I was working on a client project with some developers in Argentina, and I saw how amazing it was working with people in my time zone who were just as available as people in my office. So in 2010, I started Scalable Path to help companies take advantage of this underutilized talent pool. And since then, we've built a platform of over 40,000 developers, and we've placed over 600 of them with over 300 clients. So if you're looking to hire top-notch dev talent at a fraction of the cost of hiring locally, visit scalablepath.com/commit. And as a listener of the podcast, you can get 20% off your first month. I'd love for you to give us a try. Cool. So I probably should have done this a bit more earlier on, but just to break it down a little bit for people who, this would be really great if we could share a screen or something here, but I don't know if we can do that here. But your app lets you see multiple devices side by side.
Yeah.
And I saw like in some of the default themes, you could have a lot, 10 or something. Like, what do you do? What's your default? I guess it depends on what product you're developing, but do you ever do it across multiple screens, like to get them all there?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a reason that the default that you start with in Polypane is the default. And that reason is because that's what I like to use.
Yeah, mobile, tablet. And
mobile, small tablet, and like laptop size.
Laptop, yeah.
Because those tend to be like the major focus areas, and then the more you get like larger than laptop doesn't really matter because you usually have like a fixed width on your website, because otherwise line lengths get too long and everything starts to get off balance. So I use that a lot, but I also switch a lot. So by default, all the panes are aligned horizontally, because that means you can very easily like visually compare them because they're literally like side by side. So the header is in the same place, your content is in the same place as you scroll, and that makes it easier to compare. But there's 4 other layouts in Polypane, so you can also have them scroll vertically, so they're stacked on top of each other, which gives you a bit more packing. There's a focus layout, which shows you just one pane, kind of like the responsive mode in Chrome, but faster, and it also lets you easily cycle through different devices. Then there is the split mode, which puts 2 panes side by side and always fills out the screen. So that's a nice mode when I don't really care about responsive design as I'm working on something, but I do want to sort of like keep an eye on it. So I'll have like a small sidebar with the website open, and then if something horribly breaks, I'll see it, and for the rest I can just ignore that and still have like a large pane or a large size right in front of me. And then the last is just like a regular browser view, so like a regular Chrome tab, and that I use a lot when I'm doing accessibility work, because then it doesn't really change the way the DOM structure is unless you're doing something weird. But generally I try not to do weird things with my website, so I know what the accessibility tree does there. So if I'm inspecting accessibility, I'll use that because it just gives me like a very large overview of the site, and then I can focus on the panel in Polypane that contains all this accessibility information.
Cool. So you mentioned like when I'm working on something, like are you still doing work for other projects besides Polypane, or is it?
It's mostly Polypane. There's the website itself, like the marketing website that I continuously try to work on with like new blog posts, and then I want to build some like interactive component for that blog post, so then that needs to be tested.
Okay.
Or I'm building new online tools around Polypane. And I also have a few other side projects that are related to Polypane that I sometimes, also work on their websites for.
Does that include Superposition?
Yeah,
Is that one of them?
The two major ones are Superposition, which is a desktop tool where you can load a web page and then it extracts all your like colors, font sizes, margins, padding, shadows, etc. So sort of like your design tokens that you've used on your website, and then it exposes them as CSS or JSON or JavaScript or directly into Figma.
And can you so it basically creates sort of like a design system in Figma
So
out of your own website, kind of reverse.
Yeah, the idea behind it is like, even if you don't have a design system, because building a design system up front is very expensive, your website is still like a version of the design system.
It's like a working design system, yeah.
It's just like very poorly encoded. Like it's very difficult to get information out of that. So what if we just let the computer do that, and you can have like Superposition open and then the Figma desktop app open with the Superposition plugin, and then in the plugin you just get like the list of colors that you can then assign to your styles, or the list of fonts, or the types of box shadows that you use. So you can sort of just click like, yeah, this is the blue from the website that I want to use in this design update, or this is the border radius that I use everywhere. So I'm copying that over instead of inspecting or going to your source code to figure out what that exact border radius was.
Do you ever use it like, or could it be used, say you're starting to work with a new designer and they're like, I need a design system. They need to kind of get up to speed on what your design system is. Then that's just, it creates like a reference doc that someone new getting up to speed, or a new developer, right? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And what's the other one? What's the other tool?
So the other one is called Fixally. So FIXA11y.com. So Ali or A11Y is they call it a numeronym, but it's the word accessibility is very long and it has a bunch of C's and a bunch of I's and it's just very difficult to spell. But between like the first letter A and the last letter Y, there's 11 characters.
Yeah.
So we just say Ali, and then everyone understands what you mean.
Like I18N.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So Fixally is essentially the tools I built for Polypane, which are focused on like inspection of your website, but they can also be used to improve accessibility on other websites automatically. So I extract these things from Polypane, and then I create small browser extensions from them that then, like, quote unquote, normal people can use to have a better experience on the entire web. So specifically the one out now is called Fix Contrast. So in Polypane there's a feature that is a color contrast checker, and that will parse your entire web page, visually determine like the color, the text colors and the background colors you use, and then check that all the text is readable according to accessibility guidelines. So there's a bunch of tools that can do this. But what Polypane then does is it calculates like the nearest color to the color you chose that does have enough contrast with the background you chose. So it will tell you, like, this blue that you've chosen doesn't have enough contrast. It's hard to read, but this blue is very close, and you can just click it and apply it and copy it. So now you fixed the issue, and you can carry on developing or designing.
Nice.
And you didn't have to go back to a designer and go through that entire feedback loop, because that is a very long feedback loop. And what ends up happening for developers is that it either it doesn't happen, or it leads to a bunch of frustration, because now they have to wait on a different color, and it's just one line.
Oh, but if you don't go through the designer, then your Figma designs aren't up to date. Yeah. It depends what kind of organization you're in.
It really depends on the organization.
Yeah.
But I've now taken that tool, and I could just, through the extension, apply that to any web page. So you, as a viewer of web pages, can just say, I want all text to be at least this readable. Whether that's like the accessibility guidelines, or slightly below it, or slightly above it, it will just punch up all the contrasts to the minimum you've set, and then everything that's already good, it leaves it alone. So essentially, like, if you're on a web page that has a lot of like fancy looking light gray text, so that everything's like super slick, but that's unreadable, you can just toggle that extension, and now all the grays are dark enough for you to read without affecting the rest of the design.
Nice.
So it's tools like that where I've built something in Polypane where I think, or that helps people build better websites, but then it ends up being more generally applicable as well. So I just make a free extension out of it.
Cool. Are you thinking of integrating any features that involve AI? Do you think there's a place for that in this kind of a product?
It's something I'm monitoring, but I don't think I'll put AI in it anytime soon.
Yeah.
You can see a lot of browsers now frantically adding AI. But if you're being honest, none of it's really good. And they all secretly know that it's not good, because they all put up giant warnings like, don't believe anything our AI tells you. And so what I foresee happening if I do any AI in Polypane, aside from like the ethical and the sustainability arguments, etc., that are also very important there. But implementing something that works well enough will take me a very long time. It will be very resource intensive. It will cost a lot of money to run. And then developers will try to use it, and it might help well a few times, but then it does something weird once, because that's what AIs do. And then the developer will go, okay, well, guess this isn't ready yet, and never use it again. And now I've wasted all this time. And
I guess it depends what you're trying to do, how ambitious you're trying to get with it. I mean, there's some things that AI, I think, it's okay if it's off sometimes. Like if it's like, oh, here's some suggestions that you might do to improve, and then the developer could be like, oh, actually, that's a good one. That's crazy. I'm not going to do that. But at least it got 4 suggestions, and 3 out of 4 were actually useful. So that kind of thing might be a little more forgiving. I don't know.
So I'm not at that point. I'm not at a point where I think that is true for what I try to do in Polypane. So one thing I try to do in Polypane that's different from other tools is that, again, if you look at other accessibility testing tools, they'll give you all the ways to solve an issue. And that might be 5 different ways. But if you have this issue, then you don't necessarily know which of the 5 ways is the good one or the preferable one. So for example, if your image doesn't have an alt attribute, then that means that the source URL will be read out by screen readers, and the link to your image is probably hashed on some CDN somewhere. So it's probably like 300 characters long and it's all gibberish. And now you're forcing someone to listen to all that gibberish. So images need an alt attribute. But you can also do other things, like you can add a role of presentational to it. You can add an inert attribute. You can add an area hidden attribute. You can put it in some other element and then set properties on that element. And now suddenly you have a list of things where you as a developer need to figure out which of these is the preferable option. And then, because none of them are the clearly preferable option, the easiest thing is to just carry on, because your product manager isn't going to complain about that. The complaining comes later when there's an accessibility audit. And then it's even more annoying, but that's not right now. Like right now you have a deadline, your product manager doesn't care, so you skip over it. Whereas if the tool just said, this image, you should add an alt attribute to it and it can be empty. Do that.
Yeah. You want it to be opinionated and concise.
Try to be a bit more prescriptive and a bit more helpful rather than, here's 5 options, go ask ChatGPT which of these are the ones you should do.
Right.
So whenever I can give like a definitive answer that's like right 99% of the time, or even like it's the right choice 100% of the time, then I want to give only that answer. And then it gets turned around, because if you are like an accessibility expert and you're of the opinion that no, actually for this specific reason I do need inert and not an empty alt attribute, then you can do that, because you know which of those 5 options was the preferable option for you at this time. Right. But the other way around, it doesn't feel right to do that in a tool for me.
Yeah, makes sense. So we've been talking a lot about Polypane and these other products you have. I'm curious about what the process was like when you decided to fully commit to working full-time on Polypane, and what that was like for you. Yeah,
sure. So it's good to start that off with saying that at that point I had been running a web agency for 14 years. So I had employees, I had payroll, I had hundreds of customers. I knew how to run a business. So that on one hand, that wasn't scary. And on the other hand, I have a very weird sense of what is risky and what isn't, compared to like maybe other people.
How so?
So a lot of people will think like starting a company is a really risky thing to do. And I don't think so.
Okay.
Because, a company might not work out. Well, okay, but I still have my skill sets, so I can find a job somewhere else. Or, if I still have enough reserve in the bank, I can try something else. I can start another company. So there never really was, it never felt risky to me. It felt like, I'm going to give this a chance, this being working on Polypane full time.
And switching from getting paid by companies to getting paid by users who have subscriptions.
Exactly. Yeah.
And did you already have a certain amount of people paying for it at this point? And
No. Okay. So I went full time in 2019. I wanted to spend the first month doing nothing. So I left my company at the end of of 2018 to focus on Polypane.
But the other company kept going. You just left.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I divested from that company.
Got it.
So I want to do nothing for a month, which I haven't done since I was a teenager. I didn't succeed in doing that, but I did manage 2 weeks of doing nothing. And then, I started doing all the things that I would need to, or that I needed to do to be able to sell Polypane. So that meant getting the code base ready for licenses, building a subscription server, building APIs integrations with payment providers, building the marketing site, making a marketing video, etc. Setting up all the legal entities, or the legal entity that was going to sell this product, which is, again, it's not scary, but or risky, but it does involve a whole lot of documents in legalese, which by this point I have been reading legalese for well over a decade, and writing plenty of it as well in quotes, etc. So again, it didn't feel risky saying I'll be liable for this, because that's how businesses work. That's fine. That's what you sign up for. And then getting the marketing site ready, testing the payment provider, etc. And then around April I was fully ready.
That's how many months in?
That's 3 months in, I think.
Okay, but you already had a fully functional product.
Yeah,
but just not ready, not for subscriptions, no marketing site.
Yeah.
Okay.
And at that point, what I did have was an email list, and I had done a free beta, a year ago or a year earlier. And that had 3,000 people on the mailing list. So I knew I had people to send stuff to, and that helped a lot. And then I spent April getting all the final touches ready, making sure I had a product hunt release date, and had PR material available to send out to different places for the launch, etc. And then I launched on the 14th of May 2019, then gave myself a year to prove that it was viable to work on this full time. And after a year, happily enough, it turned out to be viable, and I've been doing it ever since.
And so, I don't want to be, tacky here, but how did it compare to running an agency, as far as the income, from this kind of a product?
Yeah, so I'm bootstrapping this, and that means that the money you can spend is the money you earn, rather than the VC route, which is the money you can spend is all the money the VC gave you, and if you don't spend it, you're doing a bad job. And that means that the amount of growth you can do is limited, because you can't buy all the ads on all the newsletters and all the YouTube pre-rolls, etc. You just don't have money for that, so you need to be scrappy. So right now, to be tacky, I make more than I ever made.
Oh, good.
At the agency. And I also take home more because I'm by myself. But it did take a while to get to this point, and it's 6 years of more than full-time, very hard work. Because again, it's just me. So.
No, but that's great. I mean, that's kind of inspiring. That's inspiring.
Yeah,
you went off on your own. Yeah.
What's nice about that? There's this concept of Ubuntu, which people often quote, which is you can go far by yourself, no, I don't know what it is in English. No, you can go fast by yourself, but you get further with others. And that is true. But everyone then sort of skips over that first part, which is if you go by yourself, you can go really fast. You don't have to take along anyone else. You don't have to rally the troops. You don't have to communicate anything. All the communication for Polypane happens in my head, which is very fast, and usually I agree with myself. So that helps. But also the buck stops with me. So any problem is both my fault and mine to solve. And that's actually also been very nice, because if you run an agency and you have many people working for you, then there are a lot of things that are your problem but aren't your fault. And I find that much more annoying than knowing that whatever went wrong is fully on me. And that means I also have all the tools in hand to fix that and prevent it from happening again.
Yeah, I feel you.
So that's been really nice.
As you may know, I run a vetted talent platform called Scalable Path, and I'm offering a 20% discount to listeners of the podcast. So if you're interested in scaling your dev team faster and smarter, visit scalablepath.com/commit. I have a question. You mentioned when we were speaking earlier about a unique onboarding email flow that you used. What are the insights? Tell us a quick overview of that and sort of the insights you got from that.
Yeah.
And this was for launch. This is like the flow that people get when they sign up for Polypane, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
So Polypane is a paid product. It's a subscription-based product, but you can try it for free for 2 weeks. And it's very easy. You can sign up on the website, which is polypane.app. And you don't need a credit card. You can just sign up with your email or GitHub. But that lowers the barrier of entry significantly, which is important if you're targeting developers, because developers might not have access to the company credit card. So if you need a credit card to start a trial, they just won't. But Polypane is also a very complex product. I don't think it's complicated, but it is complex. There's a lot of different types of tooling that you don't always need, but it's there and it's accessible, and there's UI for that. So it can be intimidating. And that means that I need to do more work to help people get started, and also to help keep people in Polypane. Because you might be trying Polypane for an afternoon and have fun, but then you go home and you come back at work and you grab your coffee and you're still groggy, and the first thing you do is you open your regular browser, because that's what you've been doing for the past however many years you've been a developer. So breaking out of that cycle it takes a lot of effort from my users. So I need to help them with that. I need to remind them and help them figure out ways to integrate Polypane into their workflow. Because that doesn't happen in the afternoon. It happens over the course of a few weeks, maybe even a few months, depending on how often you do development. Part of that is sending emails during the trial, so people stay up to date, people get the information they need at a time where that makes sense. At the same time, I don't track them in the app, so I have no idea what they're doing in the app, because if I did track them, a lot of users would hate that. And I prefer not doing things that users hate. I think that's generally a good business practice. So that means I have to sort of intuit where they are in their adoption flow. So I have been iterating a lot on the type of email and the frequency of email that I send during those 2 weeks, and after even. to make sure that like it's not annoying, but it is helpful and it does send the right email at the right time. So for example, as I just explained, like Polypane is complex, but developers already use a complex tool, and that's their IDE. And their IDE usually has buttons everywhere and all these different shortcuts and different panels and floating things and whatever. And they had to adopt that at some point. They had to learn those shortcuts. They had to figure out what goes where. And now it's part of their workflow. And also more importantly, there's a whole bunch of UI that is there that they don't see. Like there's a whole bunch of buttons in your IDE right now, if you're a developer listening, that are on your screen, but that you don't use. And if someone asks you point blank, what does that button do? You don't know, because it's not a button that's relevant to you. And that's fine, because that's what IDEs are. They're power tools. And then at some point you'll be, I really need functionality X. And then you Google and that button comes up and you're like, okay, I need to click that button. And you get the functionality. And then maybe you need to Google again, like 3 months in, because you only use it once every 3 months. But that's how it is with IDEs. And that's also kind of how it is with Polypane. So what I need to like help come across is that Polypane is more like your IDE than your like normal people browser. Because if Chrome suddenly starts showing the DevTools UI to a regular person, they've made a mistake. Like there's something in the UI that's wrong, that's causing normal people to open the developer tools. So they try not to do that. So their UI is necessarily as simple as possible. And then at other points, when people have already used Polypane for a bit, usually they have really good feedback from a really fresh perspective, because they've been only been using Polypane for say a week. So at that point, I just send a really short email, which is like, "Hey, how's it going? Do you have any feedback for me? Do you have?"
No, that's one way you're gathering feedback. Yeah.
Yeah. Are there things you like? Are there things you dislike? And that gives me really good feedback, because it gives me feedback from someone that hasn't been using Polypane for a very long time and might, skip over the things that annoy these new users. So that's been really good feedback. And then of course there's also like regular emails like, remember there's a couple of days left in your trial. So if there's anything you still want to test, now's the time, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So it's really a combination of the regular things you're expecting from other trials of other types of software, and then these really pointed moments where I try to get to the developer experience of it all.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So the product is $12 a month or $108 a year. I guess one of your challenges is, developers would like to get this covered by their employers. Like, what advice do you have for them?
So, like the general advice that a lot of developers need to hear is just that their manager or their boss or their employer is happy to pay for things for them, like just in general, whether that's software or courses or books or reference material. If you as a developer say, like, I need this $100 thing to be better at my job, then your manager is going to go, okay, so $100 equals, I don't know, 30 minutes of this person's time. Yeah, I mean, they're not going to care.
Yeah, it might be a little more time than that, but it's probably going to save a lot of hours if you're asking for it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the comparison that they're going to make, which is not the comparison that regular developers make. The comparison that regular developers make is, well, Spotify is also $12 a month. So does Polypane contain all the songs in the world? No, then Spotify is a better deal. So I have like two resources to help developers like first get over that hurdle. Like you can ask your boss for stuff and that makes them happy because it means that you're engaged and you're trying to improve, and that is good for the business and it's good for your happiness. And if you're happy, you stay longer at your job, and that's also good for the business. So I have a template letter for people to just copy and paste that has some of the pertinent points that managers care about. And then I also have a return on investment calculator, which you can just like plug in numbers and play around with, what is your expected return on investment? What is the break-even time with my salary? And how confident am I in using Polypane? So I have a scale from like pessimist to extreme optimist, and all of these are mapped to different case studies that I have done.
Cool.
So you can compare to real people, and that also helps. That helps people sort of place Polypane into a bucket, because at the end of the day, like $12 a month. If you work 20 days a month, that's 60 cents per day. And there are, a thing doesn't have to do a whole lot to be worth 60 cents a day, I think. But Polypane does do a whole lot.
From someone in my business who, basically sells developers by the hour to companies, it seems like your tool could save a developer at least 30 minutes a month. I mean, that was so conservative, right?
Yeah.
It would probably save you hours per month. And if you're paying $12 a month and you're saving even 30 minutes, even 10 minutes a month, and you like using the product, it's worth it. So I agree that developers should not hesitate to ask. Employers will probably be happy to pay for this productivity boost.
Yeah, but so if you are a developer listening and you take anything away from this, is that doesn't just work for Polypane. It works for everything that you think will help you do a better job.
Yeah.
So if there's a cool course that you wanna follow, or there's this PDF file that you wanna buy, or there's a specific programming font that makes you really happy, those are things that your employer is really happy to pay for, or at least that your employer should be really happy to pay for.
Yeah. At Scalable Path, we have an educational program where developers earn into this fund the more they work, and then they can use this fund that they've earned to apply to things like this. Initially, it was for education, but then it started being applied to things like, ChatGPT, and I'm happy to apply it to that. But it's a lot of developers don't even take advantage of it in our platform. So I would encourage you, if you're a Scalable Path person and you want to try Polypane or another product, you can use your educational program for that. Well, is there anything else you wanted to share that we didn't cover?
I think this is nice. So I'll share like the latest free tool that I released that is this helpful. It's called Form Inspector, and you can find it if you go to polypane.app. Form Inspector is essentially you copy in the HTML of a form that you're working on, and the web page. Everything happens on the client, so it doesn't send anything to me because I don't care. But it will parse your HTML and give you a visual representation of your form, like what are the inputs, what are the associated labels, what are their properties, how many buttons do you have, how many field sets do you have, how are they structured, and that makes it really easy for you to see anything you missed. Because with forms in particular, it's really easy to miss things. As I was building this functionality, it's also inside Polypane, where it can do even more because I have more access to the live page rather than just the HTML. But as I was developing this and I was testing all my own forms, I had to fix every single one of my forms because the tool I was building found bugs in the forms I had built before having this tool. Nice. So that was gratifying, but also humbling. So check out the new form tool and see how you can improve your forms.
Cool. Well, this has been a great conversation. Thanks again for coming on. I assume people can just find you easily if they go to polypane.app, or you want to share any other way that you'd like them to reach you?
So polypane.app contains links out to everything else. My personal site is killianvalkhof.com, and I'm on Blue Sky at killianvalkhof.com, so you can find me there as well.
Awesome. Well, that's a wrap on this episode of Commit and Push. If you found it valuable, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. And if you're building a team, check out scalablepath.com to find top developers. Until next time, keep building, keep pushing.